So I'm going to go, I opened up Photoshop and I'm going to go to Create New. And I'm just going to pick one that I already had, 1200 by 1200. The size depends on what you're doing for your project. We don't want to make it too small. I'm going to call this GIF example, and 72 resolution is fine because I'm going to make my project for the computer. We would do a higher resolution if we were doing print or other things. So I am good with these settings, and I will do create. Now I just have this square here, and I already have my timeline open. If you don't have your timeline open, go up to Window and select Timeline, and the timeline window will pop up. Mine just went away, so I'll just select that again, Timeline. So then this shows up. And I'm going to add a new layer. And in my new layer, I will just start doing some, I'm going to use the paintbrush because that's what I will use to make my GIFs. I'm going to just make a mark. And then I'm going to hit Create Frame Animation down here. I just Control Z. If you have Create Video Timeline, there's this little drop-down menu here, and you want to switch that to Create Frame Animation, and then you hit the button, and it will create the first frame from the first layer. And I am using the frame animation to create an animation from scratch, which means I'm drawing each of the frames. And as I draw each of the frames, that is how I will create the animation in the end. So that's why I'm just using this paintbrush tool. I will show you, if you have images or photos or drawings already, how to create an animation, but this is a placeholder for drawing out an animation, which you can do anything with. I'm using the paintbrush tool. Anything that I add to my animation, if I have this highlighted, so I go to this menu and I do create new layer for each new frame. So I want that. I want that not checked. If you have new layers visible in all frames, I don't want that, so I'm going to uncheck that. So I only have this highlighted, and I'm going to do new frame. And when I do a new frame, it gives me what was there in the last frame. So I'm going to add to this, and I'm going to go to new frame, and I'm going to keep adding, and then new frame, and I'm going to keep adding. And I created a shortcut for my new frame button because there wasn't one, and I made mine Command M, so that I do Command M and it does a new frame, and I do Command M and it does a new frame, Command M and I do a new frame. And then as I add to, whoops, didn't mean to do that, Control Z, oops. Let's go back to the brush tool. Command M, new frame, new frame, new frame. So each time I add a frame and I add changes to it, it is giving me the different frames for my animation. And I want what was already there because that's how the animation is created. If it's only the next part that I draw, then I don't have a cohesive animation. So now I can hit play, and that is what I've animated. I can also select all of the frames. If I go here and do select all frames, And I can change it to, let's say, 1 second delay. And that will slow it down. Right, so I could make this, if I select all of the frames again, and I make it 0.2 seconds. 0.2 seconds per frame is like the same as 12 frames per second, which is, if you're doing stop motion animation, 12 frames per second is pretty good. Since I'm drawing and it doesn't really make sense to do this sort of like stop motion animation look, I'm just going to keep mine at, select all frames. I'm just going to keep it as no delay because I want it to be just more of a fluid kind of thing. Of course, the less of a delay that you have in between your frames, the more frames you're going to need to draw to have a longer animation. But I'll show you how I created a shortcut for my new frame tool. So if you go to Photoshop and you go to Preferences, let's see, which one is it here? Workspace. No. Plugins, Gifs, Guide, Units, Rules, Transparency, Cursors. I'll go to the help. Keyboard shortcuts. Oh, it's in Edit. Okay, so I forgot where it was. Under Edit, all the way down here is Keyboard shortcuts. And then you can go to the panel menus, because that's where the animation is. So keyboard shortcuts, panel menus, and then scroll down to timeline and frames. And in new frame, you should have nothing here. And you have to select and tell it what you want it to do. So I did Command M. But if I did, let's say, Command N, it will say N is already in use and will be removed from file new if accepted. I use Command New often, so I'm not going to do that. So Command L. Command L is already in use and will be removed from image adjustments levels if accepted. Okay, well, I never really use adjustment levels shortcut. Some of the shortcuts I use all the time, some I don't. So that one would be good for me. I used Command M, which I forgot what it was. I think it was also an adjustment. So it was one of the adjustment shortcuts that I rarely ever use. So I just changed mine to Command M for new frame because that's a lot easier to do. So mine's already set to that. So I'm just going to cancel this, but you would hit OK and then accept all the changes, accept and everything to get your shortcut. So I'm going to cancel all of this. So now I'm doing continue on Command M, adding new things. Oh, maybe I'll change my color. Command M, adding new things. Command M, adding new things. Okay, so I could draw, I'm just drawing a whatever squiggly drawing. It's not really great. But I could spend a lot more time on my drawing and change my paint tools and make this a really cool animation. I could draw figures and I could bring in different things. So for example, if I wanted to add to my background, I would go here and do a new layer. And I don't know, let's say I wanted to add green dots as my background here. I'm going to bring my layer all the way back down near the background so that it's behind things that I already did if I want this to be the background. And then with it highlighted, if I go to match layer across frames, and I'll do all of that and I hit OK, it adds those green dots to all my layers that I already animated. So if I hit play, those green dots are not a part of the animation, they're part of the background because I'm adding that layer in as part of the background. I can also take off this background if I wanted to have a transparent background, or I can bring in something. So just like how we were doing, if I do, here, I'm going to open an image that I have already. So let's see. I had this graphic that I made the other day. I'm going to bring this in. So I just opened it and in a new file, and I'm bringing this into my image and shrinking that down a bit. So let's say I want this image to be a part of my background. I go to my menu here and I say match layer across all frames. Okay. So now my animation is this computer animated thing. And I can keep building this out for as long as I want to. I could also animate different things that I want to add into my layers. But I'll give you another example of going from layers to the animation. So now let's say, okay, I'm done animating my GIF and I like that. But let's say, okay, I'm gonna make it a transparent background because this GIF is a part of my series of Gifs project that is gonna go into my website. And this is just one of many GIFs I'm gonna make. So it's not doing what I want with the background for some reason. And it has to do with this back layer. So I'm just gonna delete that original layer back there. So now there's no white background at all. And it gives me a transparent background GIF, which is what I want. And now I go to File and Export. And I do Save for Web. Even if I'm gonna not do this for the web, but I just wanna make a GIF, let's say, for bringing into some other project, I still have to go to Save for Web in order to get each of the files, each of the frames to show up. And these are different optimizations. The higher the dithered number, it supposedly gives you more of a higher resolution. So if I want that to be a higher resolution, it's giving me more colors in my animation. So I'll do that. And it's transparent, so I'm keeping my transparency. And then I'm just gonna hit save. And I'll just save this on my desktop, my GIF, and hit save. Sorry, there's music outside. Okay, so let's go look at that. This was the image I brought in. So here's my GIF. And if I hit spacebar, I can preview it. Okay, great. So this is my animated GIF that I made frame by frame in Photoshop.